Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out. I think we have an awesome session ahead for everyone who braved the early morning panel slot here today. We are talking about bridging the gap between in-game and digital engagement. And I'll start out just by quickly introducing our panelists and have them more importantly introduce themselves. Andrew, you wanna
Sure.
go first? Yeah.
Morning, everybody. I am Andrew Yaffe. I'm the head of social, digital, and original content at the NBA. So I'm responsible for our app, our social media handles, and our documentary film business.
I wasn't quite prepared to introduce myself, but I'm Lisa Leslie, a former WNBA player, a four-time Olympic gold medalist, and a Hall of Famer. I'm also a host on We Need to Talk on CBS Sports Network. I'm also a real estate professional. I have a lot of jobs, so I'll just stop there.
And a mom of two.
And a mom of two, yes, and wife. So.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Paul Liberman, and I'm the president of Global Product and Technology and co-founder at DraftKings. So I run all the product and technology, as my title states, and also a pilot and a father of two.
Yes, let's go.
So.
And I'm Myles Kleeger. I'm the president of a company called Braze. We are a software business that helps actually companies like DraftKings and the NBA build better relationships with their fans and their customers through personalized and relevant messaging. Either things like in-product messaging or out-of-product things like email, WhatsApp, SMS, things like that. So it's about relationship building, engagement, loyalty, and ultimately monetization, which we'll cover in a variety of ways today. So jumping in first, Paul, I'd be curious if you'd be willing to kind of spend a minute or two just talking about your co-founder of DraftKings, which is obviously one of the most iconic and impactful companies and brands in all of sports, and has played such a critical role in the growth of sports in so many ways, as well as engagement. I'm just curious if you could tell the audience a little bit about your founding story and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So we founded the company in 2011, and me and my two co-founders, Jason and Matt, we all worked at a company, Vistaprint, together, who, by the way, randomly ran into their CEO outside the elevator here, who was their CEO. But we worked at Vistaprint, and we were all in analytics and marketing. And one of my co-founders was big into in online poker, and we all played fantasy together. And at the end of the NFL season, when all of the fantasy lineups were done, and it was right before the Super Bowl, we're like, well, this kind of sucks. Like, you're playing fantasy and you don't really get to participate in the largest event. And my co-founder Matt came up with this idea of daily fantasy. So what if we were able to do, create a fantasy game for just one day with the players, and not have to do it, for season long. And we were in a conference room. It was a Friday night. I can remember the day right before the week before the Super Bowl, and we're like, all right, let's go kick it off. And we went back I had a spare bedroom, luckily at the time, and we went back and started doing our research, found out that there was like 100 other companies that were doing the same exact thing, which was a massive disappointment. But, we were like, let's go. We're going to apply technology and marketing and analytics to this space. We saw the other companies weren't doing that, and we thought that we could compete. And, since then, we've done a lot of things. We've done daily fantasy, we've done gaming, we're in the NFT space. But I think the big thing that's been core for us is really leveraging product technology, marketing, and analytics as core competencies of the organization. We're not a traditional gaming company. We're a marketing technology company. So that's where we are today.
Nice.
Very cool. All right, awesome. So since our kind of our session theme here is about bridging the gap between in-game and digital engagement, I figured we'd start there. As a big sports fan myself, and I assume most of the people here would feel the same way, I think it's reasonable to say there's nothing quite like being in the arena or in the stadium for a big game, for a big moment. But obviously the reality is that those opportunities are few and far between, right? I mean, there's only so many games we get to go to a year. Yet we have, hundreds of millions of avid sports fans. And kind of curious, Andrew, starting with you, how do you think about that kind of fundamental challenge of, there's nothing like being in the arena, but you can't really be in the arena very often. How do you think about that experience? And do you think about digital and tech as a way to augment, replicate, replace? Just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our commissioner is fond of saying that 99% of NBA fans across the world will probably never set foot in an arena.
99%.
And given that the majority of our live games are watched outside the U.S. and 80% of our social following is outside the U.S., he might be understating it. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about how we bring that in-arena experience and the excitement of the game to our fans wherever they are. And I think it really comes back to, as you said, technology and the ability to use our technology to provide options for our fans and provide the experience that our fans want to have on whatever platform they're watching on. And so that could be everything from virtual reality and augmented reality to truly give you the courtside experience to highlights and recaps on social media that give you a bite-sized experience because you're asleep. You live in Europe when games are on and you wake up in the morning and want to see what happened in that arena the night before. And I mean, even in the last several months, the progression of technology to help us enable those experiences has been amazing.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a second. So at the end of the day, you think about not replacing or replicating that experience, which can't be done, although maybe with some of these new technologies it can be, but more about leveraging each of the individual platforms in its own unique way to build the overall new experience with the brand, basically.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it really is about creating, we have so many different types of NBA fans who want to consume the game in such a different way. And that's based on what platform they're on, based on what team they follow or what player they follow, based on whether they're interested in, and we were joking coming in, sneakers, whether they're interested in what's happening on the court. And it's really, I think, on us to provide that entire ecosystem with the options for the ways they want to engage.
Yeah. And Lisa, I'm curious, as someone who's literally participated in these iconic moments, too many to recount here, how do you think about something like that? Just sort of like that, I'm in the game, the crowd feeding off that versus people just watching a 30-second clip on YouTube or something like that?
Yeah, well, I got really interested in the digital space. I think once I retired and you saw where everything just started to shift, right, with whether it was the NFTs or just different ways to engage. So I became an investor in Loot Mogul, which is one of the digital platforms that also can help with fan engagement and how they see it and giving fans an in-arena opportunity or in a stadium, or if they're at home watching virtually, there's ways that you can participate where you can win prizes and it becomes very tangible, communicating with other corporations that want to participate and create fan engagement as well. So we're trying to always find ways to bring together the fan experience along with that digital experience if they don't have the opportunities, obviously, to get in arena. But if they do have the opportunities to get in arena, there's still opportunities there where you can play and you can engage and you can find ways to win prizes around the arena. You can find ways to win, hopefully, a one-on-one or an opportunity to even meet one of those athletes or get their jersey. So Loot Mogul is doing an amazing job in that digital space of just finding different ways to bring together that fan experience as we talked about. Now, for me personally, being out there, I almost wish I could set the clock back to, or bring you guys forward to having all of these digital opportunities that are obviously growing the game. A DraftKings who's really shining a light on women's basketball and women's sports in general in a way that we hadn't seen before. So I had my time out there. I did the best that I could do when I was playing, but I'm so excited about the future of women's sports and all of the sponsorships that these young women are getting, and obviously the platform. We can talk about numbers, but the women's game, and it's not that it's a competition, guys, but we're getting our opportunities and we are outshining the men right now, especially in college sports. So it's just an amazing opportunity to be a part of it, I think from the investor side. And I just can't wait to continue to see where the future goes with digital and the fans just coming together and being able to grow the sports.
Yeah. So before I come to Paul, I have a whole bunch of questions for you on this topic, but just kind of, back to all the different ways to consume content. And I think the NBA also, Andrew, you and your team in particular have done a great job of turning these iconic moments that happen, like for example, LeBron breaking the scoring record or the first to hit 40,000 points, and turning those into events, right? Global events in the moment, but then well beyond the moment. curious, Lisa, your first dunk in 2002 in the WNBA game. How do you think that would be covered today?
Man, I missed it. I mean, the fact that it gets talked about so much every single year, every day, and then, there's always the guy with the egg with no name who's just like, oh, that sucks. But beyond that, it's been embraced in such a way that was a game-changing moment for the WNBA. And I think we've just taken off and obviously accomplished so much more since then. But if that had happened in today's digital space, I mean, come on,
it'd be crazy.
It would be me and Caitlin at the top,
Exactly.
So, but I really love what's happening for them. And you look at the milestones that Caitlin has done in her scoring, the best scorer in women's basketball history in college. Like, those are things that timing is everything. And she's striking right now where the timing is hot. The fact that she's decided to come out of college right now, timing is hot. Like, there's nothing else that she could accomplish at the college level, and there's so much more. So her going into the WNBA, the numbers start to go up. People are betting already on how far they'll go in the tournament. This has been amazing. So again, I missed the mark in some ways, but I'm very happy for the women.
Last summer at the WNBA All-Star Game and in the three-point contest, Sabrina Ionescu had the record-breaking performance in the three-point contest.
Talking about the WNBA.
In the WNBA last summer, she had 37 points.
Right?
Yeah. It was the most amazing shooting display you'll ever see, and it was one of our top moments on social, men's or women's, all season long over the last year. So just to your point, it's those are the type of moments that break the internet, regardless of gender.
And I apologize for making you introduce yourself earlier. That was that was wrong of me.
No, it's fine.
But I do want to just say that, and I know you know this, but you wouldn't say it, but none of these moments that are happening right now with Caitlin and Angel and Sabrina and all that stuff, none of that's possible without you and the trail that you blazed a long time ago to make all this possible. And
Thank you. You know what? There's so many women who came before me, Ann Myers of the world, and we can go way back, Blaze. There's so many women who played that didn't get the opportunities that I had. So we know that each space in women's history and sports, it's just your time and you do the most that you can do in that moment. And I felt like for me, I really took being a role model at heart. I knew that I was having an opportunity not just to impact young girls, but also boys. I would sign autographs, take pictures with the boys too, because those boys grow up to be men who are decision makers, who understand. And then the last thing I'd say is just the impact that Kobe had when you talk about girl dads and just really bringing that to life has changed the way fathers, and you have two daughters, as fathers look and see women through the eyes of their daughters, and you see the importance of the equality. So I'm really happy where we are going in women's sports, and I'm happy to have played my part in where I've been able to move the game.
That's awesome. You're still playing a part, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much still an ambassador for the game. And then one more question on this topic before I come to you, Paul. I promise I will. How, Andrew, just from the way you and your team sort of look, I mean, there's certain iconic events, obviously, that you can't predict, right, that happen in the moment. And then there's some, like, scoring records that will be broken around a certain time. So how do you think about sort of the strategy and the planning around both of those situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we try to build, I mean, part of the beauty of the game is we'll have 11, 12, 15 game nights, and at any moment, something amazing can happen somewhere in one of those games. And I think my team looks at it as, one, a challenge, but two, an incredible opportunity to be ready for whatever that might be. When Anthony Edwards makes an amazing block and hits his head on the rim and his shoulder on the backboard and does an athletic feat, it's immediately, how many angles do we have of that? How do we get the right angle on the right platform? Is it a push notification to all Timberwolves fans or to all NBA fans? I think all of our preparation, all of our practice is to be ready for one of those moments, because it can happen. And it's the beauty of a sport like ours, is it can happen literally at any time, 320 nights a year. And so we have a team that works very hard till very early in the morning to prepare ourselves for that. And at the same time, is doing weeks and weeks of preparation for when LeBron is going to break the scoring record, is going to hit 40,000 career points, to have all of the archive ready to go. We have, when he broke the scoring record, we had a compilation of every basket he had made in NBA in his entire career. Wow. And we're able to produce that video. And so there is just like an amazing both real-time operation as well as historical and archive operation that comes together to produce, one-of-a-kind content.
Yeah, and back to Lisa's point earlier on timing being everything. Certainly the case on these iconic moments. You have to be prepared to be out there immediately, right? And without that, you sort of miss the moment.
Yeah, and I think now, it's your business too, our fans expect real-time, instantaneous content, and whether that's for, DraftKings purposes or fandom purposes, they want to know exactly what's happening as it's happening, and we need to deliver on that expectation.
Absolutely.
It's funny, I was actually, as you were talking, how similar our jobs are, because we're doing those, those iconic moments impact betting, they impact behaviors, and we have people that are doing the same exact thing, looking for those iconic moments, or even leveraging, we'll talk about like AI and identifying like what are the things that are happening at that moment in time, whether it is an amazing sporting event or whether it's an injury on the field, and how that affects betting odds and lines, not just for that game but for the entire season for those teams. So it's interesting the similarities between some of the work we do.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little more about betting. I think it's pretty safe to say that sports betting and particularly DraftKings and some of the things that you've done from an innovation perspective have forever changed how people interact with sports, right? So just back to that original sort of question we were talking about, how do you think about sports betting when I'm at the game versus when I'm not at the game? If I'm not even watching the game, I'm just watching the box score, I'm getting live activity updates from the NBA. Like, strategically, do you differentiate those things, or?
Yeah, so we try to make an amazing experience whether you're at the game or not. Like Andrew said, more than 99%, there's a very small percentage of people that are sitting there in the stadium. And actually, usually when they're in the stadium, they're consumed by the live event and, they're focusing and on the game. When they're at home, there's a very different experience. They're watching the game, they're watching many games. And what sports betting it does is it makes all these games more exciting, and it introduces people to more of the stats and more of the players, and people are thinking about how does the game work and how is it going to evolve over time? So it creates a really different experience. And one of the interesting things that we found is that while usually people start sports betting or playing daily fantasy when they like sports, one of the things that we found is that sports betting actually also introduces people to all brand new content. So we talked about WNBA, for example, as we see that for the NCAA women's the women's conference, we've seen betting up 13x year over year on that sport. So people are now finding new players and they're engaging, and then what they're doing is they're watching media, and consuming all that different content. So we're helping, not only engage players in sports, but also discover, other athletes and, other sports.
Yeah, that's the key word. I was actually going to say discover, and then you just said it, because you're helping people sort of identify new things about the game that they didn't even know existed, right? And then get sucked into it, which is super cool. Awesome. So, Andrew, I'm going to come back to you for a second. You alluded to this earlier, but with new technology, you guys have been at the forefront in so many ways as the league, both NBA and WNBA. And now we're kind of getting into the time when maybe that augmented reality vision that's been sort of dangling out there for a long time, and the metaverse and things like that, is much more accessible than it was before. Obviously, we have the MetaQuest stuff going on, which you guys have been involved with for a couple of years now.
Yeah, several years, yeah.
Yeah. The Apple Vision Pro sort of release, which is still, obviously, it's in its infancy, but it feels like it could be a game-changing moment, just based on, I haven't personally had an opportunity to experience it yet. But talk a little bit about that, because I know, Adam Silver's obviously been at the forefront.
Yeah. We've been, I started the league in 2010 and left and for a couple of years and came back in 2016. And actually one of the first things I worked on was our first, we call League Pass VR, or League Pass virtual reality, deal. And so we've been doing this now for, must be 8 seasons, where 7 or 8 seasons, where we're distributing games in virtual reality across platforms. And I think to kind of your first question of how do you make the fan feel like they're, and a fan who's not in the building feel like they're in the building, the advances in technology are remarkable over that time period. And now we on MetaQuest have a number of games throughout the course of the season that are distributed in VR. And it really is a game-changing experience, especially for those who can't get to the arena. And I think we're constantly experimenting with new camera angles and new ways of doing audio within that VR experience that are really exciting. But I think one of the next, there's a whole new world of technology and a next frontier about how you make that even more immersive. We've been experimenting with some technology that truly can bring you inside the game, and there are, at a couple of our arenas, we've surrounded the court with cameras and have essentially a 3D game experience where if you want to see the game from the eyes of the point guard, you can zoom in and see his exact vantage point at any given moment. And the Brooklyn Nets distributed a portions of a game. They called it the Netivision, or the Netiverse. The Netiverse, that's what it was. That makes much more sense. The Netiverse, where it was truly inside the game. And I think we're still just at the early days in what that technology will do, but it's incredibly exciting.
Sounds expensive.
I think technology typically gets cheaper over time.
Good answer.
And so we're excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. No, but it's not dissimilar to like the advent of like 4K and all that, right? Where it's like you get the hardware that can support the experience, but then there's no content for a while, right? And then eventually the content catches up. But yeah, I personally am excited because I think there's the notion of, I'm still a purist for what it's like to be in the arena, and the 99% number is kind of jarring, but if you can recreate that when you're not there and you can make it social with your friends, right? Like if you could be, instead of just everyone texting the whole time and then you're missing the game on TV, if you can all be like there.
Yeah.
it's very powerful. And how about from a betting perspective? I mean, I know within the UI, this notion of like you can have multiple apps existing simultaneously, so I assume we're gonna have real-time odds flowing through while I'm watching what the point guard's doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately the goal, is how do you make it as seamless of an experience and meet the consumer where they are. And we already have partnerships where we do put odds on the screen, and it's based on what's going on at that game at that point in time, so you can see things need to be relevant. We leverage a lot of technology to figure out what's the right thing to show at that right moment in time. But as the NBA develops amazing contests, whether it's the MetaQuest 3 or Apple Vision Pro, it's how do we integrate into that experience to make it as seamless as possible? How do we make it social as well? One of the things that we recently introduced is social betting feeds, where lots of people like to see what their friends are betting on, and it makes it more fun. They tail their bets, or they're
you fade your friend,
or you're fading your bets. No one ever tails my bets. They always fade my bets. It's usually the best way to bet. Is just fade anything I'm doing. But it makes it a fun experience, and that's what people do when they go out to bars. They want to have some skin in the game together, and we can now make that experience virtual while providing an experience. It's almost like sitting courtside. I tried on some of these products. It's amazing. Like, kudos to your team.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Lisa, any perspective on this, just from where you sit? And because you probably see a lot of tech flying at you too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that it's going to be the way of the world. I feel like I look at it through my children's eyes, because this is something that they've grown up with. They have these Oculus on, doing all kinds of things beyond just watching basketball or playing Y2K or all these different video games. Like, their experience, we talked about it, I think it was last night when you were saying you took your daughter to a WNBA game, and that experience for her was like, oh yeah, it's just women playing. Like, she's not wowed by, oh my God, there's ladies playing. And I feel like the young people are having these experiences. They're used to betting, they're used to watching their game, they're used to watching it virtually, where it's a part of their world. Where I feel like us older, we're like, oh my God, how exciting is that? It's just like, it's just a game. I went in and watched my kids playing a game. I'm like, the Staples Center, well, it's not the Staples Center, but it's crypto now, right? But the crypto arena looked so much like I was at the game, and then I went in there and I'm like, oh my God, like the experience of everything around the arena was the exact same, from the seats, from everything. And I was like, cool. This is really amazing. So I think to just see it from the eyes of the youth, where they're going to grow up with this experience, it won't be anything new, but they'll definitely understand how to navigate it much better than we will. And I love that for them.
Yeah.
They've never been to a Laker game, but they feel like they have been already.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's a great point. I think even just to what we were talking about earlier around how people experience the game, it's like it's generational, right? It's like younger kids now, they're not necessarily that interested in traveling an hour to go to the game, and that's a whole new set of threats for your franchises, Andrew.
I think we've done just fine with that.
Yeah, trust me, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'll take a ticket any day.
Yeah. Very good. So I want to actually come back to the topic of kind of the explosive growth of women's sports, the WNBA, college basketball, things like that. I feel like we cruise through it quickly, but there's more to say here. You guys threw out a couple stats. I think viewership for WNBA was up nearly 50% year over year, 46% I think is the stat. 13x increase in the handle. I'm curious, Paul, like what else are you guys seeing? My understanding is that you have women now betting on college basketball in a way that betting period in a way that they didn't before. But you're also attracting men and other people into being more interested in women's sports. So kind of walk us through that a little bit and how that's all unfolding. Yeah,
it's men and women that are now engaging in women's sports, and I think that's exciting. With people like Caitlin or Sabrina. I was saying that for the three-pointer competition, 98% of people bet on Sabrina to win. She had a little bit better odds, but not that much.
It's crazy.
So it's crazy, and I think that as these athletes, as there's more media attention on them, more people are betting on them, and then there's a reinforcing loop that happens because once more people are betting on them, they get more media time, they get more screen time, they get partnerships, et cetera. So. I think that betting might serve as kind of the great equalizer between the different products, the men's products and the women's products, because it's readily accessible, and there's a lot of amazing athletes out there. The product, WNBA is an amazing product. So, one of the things that we're seeing is that there are more and more people engaging in those products. They're looking for those sports. They're streaming those games live, right within the DraftKings platform. And it'll take time, it'll take years, it'll take seasons, it'll take athletes that, have amazing performances. But that's one of the, kind of incredible parts of, the product that we provide is with, the NBA and the WNBA is you can now experience it live with technology, you can bet on it, and it's really a great experience.
And let me just add to the pressure that Sabrina was under in that moment, because we talked about, again, Andrew, the moments of having something spectacular happen. She goes out and you think she's just doing this shooting against Steph Curry, who's obviously the best shooter in the world, but she's actually up against a competition of all the men who shot, because you know that you're going to compare her number to everyone. And the fact that she did so great and got 26, I was like a happy mom, like, yes, that's solid, we can live with that. Because Dame Lillard wins the three-point contest with 26. So the fact that she got 26, it's again that moment, and that moment becomes bigger. There's betting happening, but what else happens? Now you know who Sabrina Ionescu is more than ever, but she equalizes that playing field where you go, and now you're betting on a New York Liberty game and watching her play, right? You know that Caitlin Clark's coming into the WNBA. She's going to be in Indiana. The odds were probably not great for Indiana last year. That's going to change. So I think that the connection with the moments of how well the product is, because you have to recognize that these women are playing great basketball. So the product is there, but now that we have the attention and the support, I think it's just going to continue to grow, and the future is so bright for women's sports in general.
Yeah, and then, not that you didn't have this back then, but like you said earlier, people just weren't paying as much attention, right? But like the rivalries and
Yes.
you know, these players that sort of like almost like Larry and Magic being in college together and then taking that through the NBA for 20 years after that. It's like the same thing is going to happen now in women's basketball.
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate that some people missed it because we had those things happening, whether it was, you know, Swoops or Houston versus LA, and we had LA versus everybody, actually. LA versus Sacramento, or, you know, Lauren Jackson and I. There were so many battles and moments that got missed and didn't have the opportunity to have this platform that I'm so happy that you will see it. You know, you're going to see Angel Reese if she decides to come into the WNBA this year. You know, Asia Wilson's going to have something to say about that position and that spotlight. And so that's the beauty of it also, is that we get to create these storylines that create the competition that also then create betting and opinions about who you think's going to win. And it's only going to continue to grow and get better.
Yeah. I think the other interesting thing to think about is that even like 5-6 years ago, live streaming of content wasn't all that popular. Yeah. Even in 2018, 2017, you know, the YouTube TVs, the Hulu, you know, Hulus, Fubos, whatever, they weren't really that popular. And now, you know, the content is more available. Even on, you know, DraftKings, we're just getting the WNBA content and the NBA content in our, you know, in our product. And one of the challenges with WNBA is like, where do you find the games and how do you watch them? And now that's becoming a lot more ubiquitous, which also helps.
That has definitely been a huge challenge. And we used to have it where you knew it was like every Tuesday and Thursday or WNBA basketball, and that's something that I think they're going to continue to have to work on so that the fans can know exactly where to find the games consistently at all times. You're right.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe a new content opportunity for you to go back in time and get all these great WNBA moments that no one really saw.
I wouldn't say no one really saw.
Well, sorry. Yeah, fair enough. So just on a related point to changing gears out of the NBA for a second, there was another pop culture phenomenon that happened this past year that was related to betting and viewership in sports, and that was this whole like Taylor and Travis thing. Anyone hear about that? Paul, curious. Obviously, there was a lot in the news about it, but what was that like at DraftKings as that was unfolding?
I mean, it was crazy. All of our marketing people were trying to figure out what copy we need to write that's Taylor Swift related. Yeah, I mean, the engagement on Travis Kelce player props was through the roof. He was, you know, if he scored a touchdown, you know, during the Super Bowl, it would have been crazy for us. But we just saw as soon as Taylor Swift got involved, the numbers for any player prop on Travis Kelce went up. I think that he was like 3 or 4x more bet on than any other player in the Super Bowl, which is crazy. But it just shows how the cultural phenomena, the betting, all you know, plays together, and it reinforces, you know, how often they're showing Taylor Swift on TV. You know, so it's interesting to see that
cycle. Yeah, weren't you guys like naming prop bets after her songs? And
yeah,
things like
it was
that?
Like every single one of our prop bets was a Taylor Swift song at one point. We had to teach all of our marketing people about the whole Taylor Swift discography.
But I love the fact, as her as a woman and having that impact on the NFL, maybe you guys got tired of it, fellas, but I thought it was great. It made, again, another group of young people get into, I mean, they had women doing like 101 football to teach you like, this is what this means when, you know, if they pass or if there's a flea flicker, like you're learning like basic terminologies about football, but it had a huge impact, which brought more awareness to the sport. Totally. So I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our vantage point, I take kind of going back to the Steph and Sabrina example, and a little bit different, but the idea of bringing a new audience into the fold, and how do you, again, open up your aperture and ensure that you're catering to all your potential fans. And we saw for All-Star Saturday Night, where Steph and Sabrina competed, our viewership for females 18 to 34 was up over 40% year over year, and it peaked during the Steph and Sabrina contest. So, you know, we didn't quite have Taylor Swift on site, but definitely the lesson of how do you bring new audiences into the fold was something we took to heart.
And did you guys prepare for that and then put together some strategies and okay, we're going to get maybe exposure to new audiences that we didn't have previously. How do we keep them, right? How do we nurture them?
Yeah, and you know, I think a lot in our digital ecosystem was how do we then capture that? How do we convert these people to be NBA ID members and bring them along on a sort of a customer journey?
Okay, cool. How about you, Paul? I mean, do did you have specific strategies on how to retain?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we definitely saw was a lot more female engagement in the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is an interesting one. We actually typically see more female engagement with a lot of our player and team prop bets. But certainly with Taylor Swift being involved, the entire season, the Chiefs were getting higher female engagement than any other team in the league. And the other interesting thing is usually, we're obviously located, we operate in many different states. It wasn't just in Kansas City, where you're seeing female engagement. It was across the country. The amount of Chiefs fans that were created, and then, now it's our challenge is how do we continue to engage them? How do we continue to retain them? I think some of the stuff that's going on in, the WNBA and the 3-point competition does, engage that audience. So that's something that we're, constantly working on. And we're working with our marketing teams and in engaging them and making sure we have the right moments to bring them through the cycle.
Yeah, that's great.
I got an idea I need to talk about.
All right, I love it.
Before we switch to the next topic, curious if anyone in the audience has any questions for our panelists on any of the things we've talked about so far.
There's one actually. Sorry, Ando from UK. I run a company called Happening. We're also looking at sort of improving fan engagement, also in sports and entertainment in general. Really interested about what you were talking about, the metaverse, actually, because we're doing something really similar, except we're using user-generated content. So essentially, the phones in everybody's pockets to provide that same experience. In particular, because we're looking at how to break that fourth wall. We're really interested in how to get people more involved in what's happening, hence the name of the platform, Happening. Really keen to find out what ideas or what trends are you guys seeing that you're excited about around some of the technologies that are breaking that fourth wall and really inviting fans to almost involve themselves in the action as well.
Yeah. I think it's a great question. It's something that we spend a lot of time on. As I've said a few times, I think we, at a strategic level, are trying to create as many options or paths for fans to consume the game as possible. We actually recently did a partnership with this platform, Playback, that essentially allows any fan to stream as a broadcaster a League Pass game. And so the idea is if you're a diehard fan of the Houston Rockets who lives in Argentina, there is now a custom broadcast for you with a community that you can chat with, you can interact with, that is customized for your experience. And there are hundreds and hundreds of different rooms and broadcasters providing different perspectives on the same game. And that's just an area that we think is incredibly interesting to continue to explore because we want to get fans involved in as you said, the consumption of the game. We want to get fans being able to share their perspectives. And so that's an area that we're definitely interested in exploring more.
Nice, thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm also from the UK, so I thought I could say something. I'm just curious, you guys touched on it a lot. It seems like a lot of emphasis is on real time and social and clips. Obviously what you guys are talking about in terms of the VR experience, but curious to see where you see traditional broadcasting go when it comes to matches and games. I feel like me as a fan, I look at my own viewing habits. I don't watch much live basketball at all anymore, and that's probably because you're doing a really good job. But I want to know, like, how do you internally at the NBA and the WNBA kind of deal with that conflict, and where you see kind of linear broadcasting going in the next 3-4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think linear, the sort of traditional broadcast is still absolutely paramount for us. Something like 1 billion people a year watch some part of a live NBA game across the world. Our ratings continue to be up, and so that's obviously a primary focus for us, and something that we're not going to stop investing in. I think we continue to view our content as some of the most valuable live content in the world. I think a lot of what we try to do is to supplement that and to bring new fans into the fold and to introduce new fans across the world to the game, especially younger demographics whose viewing habits have changed. How can we introduce them to the game, educate them about the game, both highlights but also off-court content, and who our players are. I think we've seen a lot of success in making working with our players or our players themselves being brands as big off the court as they are on the court. And so we've developed a number of shows. We launched a show last season called Pass the Rock that's an in-depth look at the next generation of superstars and starting to profile individual players so that our fans can really understand who they are off the court. So I think all of that is really about how do we drive people into our ecosystem and ultimately consume the live game.
And to add to that, we've also had, I've had an opportunity to do like broadcasting for the NBA through podcasts where the game can play and you have former players that we will like commentate and sort of talk about the game, which has really been a lot of fun and engaging for fans, whether you watched it live or you can catch that podcast later. And I've also done it's not quite called a podcast, but it's called Details, what Kobe Bryant had started. So a lot of us have stepped in and done some spotlighting on, for example, it could have been LeBron, scoring the 40,000 points, but spotlighting how he was able to do that and really detailing, exactly how he's able to score or rebound or really being specific about those individual players with other former players talking about the game. So I think the podcast world has been also an added bonus for the NBA and WNBA to really spotlight the game for those fans who may not watch it live as well.
Yeah. All right. Oh, is there another question?
Oh, sorry.
You can't be from the UK, right?
I come from Canada, different part of the Commonwealth. Hi, I'm Catherine. I have a question regarding how you see loyalty evolving and the expectations of audiences and fans evolving as you're reaching new audiences, younger demographics, WNBA attracting new types of profiles of fans. What do you think their expectations will be as you go down the road of, creating more access or status or stuff for fans to get down the NBA rabbit hole or other platforms rabbit hole and be more engaged?
Yeah, I think for us on the DraftKings side, loyalty is incredibly important. And one of the things that we've learned over time is that a bespoke and personalized loyalty program is actually one of the most effective ones. It's how do you come up with the right content, the right offers, the right experience, and the right tracking for the different individuals. So a lot of loyalty programs were based on points and just accumulating points and reaching levels. And while we have that, one of the important things is how do you tie that type of loyalty with customized experiences and customized offers that are relevant for people that whether it is if you live near a stadium, it's tickets to a game. If you don't live near a stadium, maybe it's bets or merchandise or other things. So one of the big things that we're kind of doing is how do you combine traditional loyalty programs with AI, machine learning, marketing expertise to bridge that gap and make sure that people are getting what they want out of the loyalty program, not just what a marketer or provider wants to bring. So it's like an interesting spin on how loyalty is evolving for us.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay. Very similar answer. We launched NBA ID, our new membership program, before last season, and the objective is similar. It's not just about loyalty. It's about how do we create a personalized experience for individual fans. So as part of that, the sign-up process, you tell us who your favorite players are, who your favorite teams are, what events you're interested in, and our app is now customized with individual tabs to follow each of those things. So if you're a French, or I guess I should say British.
French-Canadian.
Yeah, or a Canadian Raptors fan, who likes to follow LeBron James and Victor Wembanyama, you'll get a feed for each of those things within your app that is customized to you. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is deliver that personalized experience. Your push notifications will be customized to that. You'll have, and we're automating a lot of that on the back end so that you could be sitting next to someone with slightly different preferences, and they're getting an entirely different content delivery on the same app. And so that's something that I think, as we think about how do we build more loyalty, keep people in the ecosystem, it starts with, how do you become a member? How do we deliver value for your membership? But how do we really deliver that customized, personalized experience?
Yeah, and I think from the athlete's perspective, I think that's what social media and the platform has really allowed us to do as individuals, to share who we are as people. Obviously, the follows and the likes, all those things really play a huge part in that. But how athletes protect themselves, their privacy, as well as what they share, that platform is really important. You create individual loyalty with fans all around the world based on our social media and how we participate with our fans, how we comment, and how we carry ourselves, which is a huge responsibility, because sometimes I think the public does not realize you see a player, but they're still a human being who, has maybe family, or there's moments when they're not on and they're not in uniform, and, they have to have their own space. So I think it's quite a balance as an athlete to have the integrity you're supposed to have and be the role model you're supposed to be at all times to everyone. And it is quite a responsibility. But social media, I think, has really helped bridge the gap. Being able to communicate with fans and being able to be the role model that you should be to the public, and then removing yourself when you're not being quite a role model also. And then there's been times where it's a platform to receive forgiveness when you have done something that you're not as proud of in those moments. So I think the loyalty goes both ways, but I believe that social media has really opened that door and allowed us to communicate directly to our fans in a way that we weren't able to do before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. And also just wanted to give a quick shout out to something Andrew said before, which is what you guys are doing in NBA ID, which we're starting to see more of our customers do is, there's so much data out there, which is actually the last topic I want to talk about. But the sort of lost art of also just asking people what they're interested in, as opposed to just trying to infer everything from behaviors, is also super valuable, right? And I think you guys have embraced that with NBA ID specifically.
We've tested a few different models of trying to infer someone's fandom, trying to infer what people's interests are from their behavior, and also just asking them. And oftentimes asking is just certainly more efficient, but it's also sometimes more accurate. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's almost always going to be more accurate.
It's always accurate.
But obviously a brand like all three of you up here, because you're a brand, as you know, you have more right and ability, I'd say, to kind of like ask those types of questions, versus there's other companies that have a harder time. People just aren't as willing to share that stuff, right? So figuring out strategically how to get consumers to kind of tell you what they really think, as opposed to trying to deduce it, is something that can be super valuable. So I know we're running out of time, but it wouldn't be a session at South by Southwest if we didn't talk about AI and data, of course. So Paul, I'm going to start with you. You guys have mountains and mountains of data. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you collect it, how you use it, some of the more innovative things that you're doing to try to drive more engagement, more betting activity, things like that.
Yeah. So AI, machine learning, really important. And we use it pretty much in every single aspect. I think actually one of the most innovative ways that we use data is actually on the responsible gaming front. Responsible gaming, super important for the industry, making sure that people are on our platform betting responsibly and are not exceeding the limits. So one of the things that we've been working with academic institutions, and you get a lot of researchers, which is really really fascinating to work with, is how do you identify trends that are kind of problem behavior trends through both academic research, but also through the data that we partner with, and then leverage machine learning to identify and help people set limits on their play and their action, whether it's a limit for spending or playing or even taking time off. So we've done a lot of that using notifications to say, is it time to set a limit? Is it time to take a break? To even having some of our agents call the customer and see how they're doing.
Wow.
So a lot of really interesting data and research that goes on there. There's also a ton that we do on the marketing and personalization. But the one that is most exciting to people is like, how do we set our odds? That's like a pretty fun one. And we do, so for every game, and I don't think people realize this, so we'll do 10,000 simulations. So right before an NBA game, we'll do 10,000 simulations where we'll simulate every pass, in 6-second increments, what's going to happen in the game. So, is there a turnover? Is there an assist? Who's likely to pass to who at what particular point in time? And we'll do that, and that's how we understand the correlation between players, the correlation between teams, how defense and offense work together. And then every 6 seconds of an NBA game, every single play, every time the clock stops, we'll do that same 10,000 simulations again to say, at that point in time, what are those likely results? So
is that how you can, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I got so caught up, I'm like, wow. So is that how you come up with will someone score 25 or more, or that's cool.
So we essentially mine our own data. So we create our data set, and then we mine our own data set. And we leverage AI to say, something is wrong. These data points are not lining up, or the amount of minutes played is lower than we expected. Is there something wrong with that player? And our model will know to adjust itself based on or injury. Yeah, injury is like a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Where if somebody gets injured, our model immediately will cut them out, and then we'll re-simulate the game based on those outcomes. So, yeah, we're doing that live every single game, hundreds of times per event, and we mine our own data in real time to say what's gonna happen, what do the scores look like. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a very cool process. Lots of really, really interesting data that we have to figure out how to integrate now into live feeds, into the MetaQuest 3.
Totally. Yeah, one of my favorite things to do, and I always think I can outsmart your models, and I never can, is you're at a game and you get a feel for the vibe of what's going on, and then live betting just in the moment, Knicks are down 12, but this is the perfect moment to jump in. But it's just fascinating to me. Every whistle, like you said, watching the money line move. And the big swings too.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's really fun to see the probabilities, and we know the variances to say, this is plus 5 points, plus or minus 5 points, and then the odds change based on those things. Yeah.
And one more quick thing for you. You mentioned something the other day when we were chatting just about using AI to proactively probe Twitter feeds, see what people are talking about, to then maybe suggest a bet to them that might be of interest.
Yeah, I mean, we use content all over the place, not necessarily on the individual level. Actually, where we use the content is, let's say there's a beat writer that says, Mac Jones, threw up in the locker room before, the Patriots game. That impacts odds, and we have to be aware of these things in real time. And there's a vast amount of information out there. Many of it that doesn't come from the leagues, because the leagues may not even have, that information. So similar to, the moments that you were talking about, we have to be able to consume them, because if somebody else is getting that information first, that puts us at a substantial disadvantage. So we leverage a lot of technology to kind of scour all the different information sources that we deem to be credible, and in real time, detect things that may likely affect betting outcomes. So we can either stop accepting bets or change the lines to address the new information that we have.
Yeah. How big is your data science team?
We have it's all distributed, but we probably have about 65 data scientists, and about 30 of them are just on sports, and then we have about 5 to 10 on responsible gaming, and then marketing is the other large one.
And how many of those are PhDs?
They're actually less. We have less PhDs than you would think. We actually find masters is the appropriate level of not to research and has enough experience. So we typically go at that level.
And they earn their doctorate with you.
And they earn their doctorate through us.
That's great.
We,
go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, I'm fascinated by that. Our use of artificial intelligence is much more on the video creation side, and so we've actually been using AI in a few different formats for close to a decade to edit and create videos. So simplest example is at the end of every game, we produce a 10-minute recap of that game that is entirely created with artificial intelligence. And within max 2 minutes of the conclusion of that game, that 10-minute recap is posted to YouTube with limited human involvement. And that's something we've been doing for a number of years. And certainly the algorithms have gotten better, the process has gotten better. But the kind of next frontier, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of our fans and our social consumption happens outside the US. Most of that content is still in English. And we're now getting into how we're using artificial intelligence to translate that content natively so that fans in any market can consume in their native language. So we're actually right now producing a game of the night recap in Spanish using AI, where artificial intelligence is using computer vision essentially and our data feeds to write a script based on what's happening in the game, translate that script into multiple languages, and then use AI to animate that audio into a broadcast. So it's not copying a broadcaster's audio, it's actually writing a fully new script and a fully new narration of the game. And so we're doing that live in Spanish, and we're very close in a number of other languages. And so it's really exciting to see what's coming in the near future when it comes to globalizing our game.
And how do you think about sort of quality control and sort of brand risk with that and sort of turning it over to the machines?
We are still doing human QA on anything before it goes public. We found that basketball vernacular is a little bit challenging especially for kind of generic AI models. There's just a whole language.
No swag yet.
Yeah, there's a whole exactly. There's a whole language to.
Any ridiculous ones you can remember?
Not that I can say publicly, but I'll tell you after. But they're between player pronunciation and kind of the language of the game, we have to do a lot of customization. And so, but we've even seen just in the amount of time that we're doing this, you train the models and they get better and better and better. And so, being able to do this with decreasing quality checks required for humans is in the very near future.
Yeah. And then
I was going to say, I think one of the interesting things where this technology may go, because I know we've had some conversations with different players, is like, how does our betting feeds, how do we combine what we have with what the NBA has to create a personalized experience? So if we know that someone's betting on the three-point competition, they want to see those clips in their feed, in their language at that right point in time. So now it's how do you combine all the, the amazing technology that the NBA is building with what the user is actually engaging in, and create that personalized, customized experience. And that's how you create loyalty, because once you have that information, once you have that great experience, the experience is more important than maybe that, that point, that currency, that loyalty currency.
Absolutely. Lisa, anything top of mind
Just
for
like
you?
anything about AI? Oh, well, for me, I use AI more on the real estate side than I do in sports and the life that I'm in now. I'm a real estate professional, and so we use AI just to really help with our marketing and pulling together the acquisition or deposition of properties for people, and really gathering that information has been excellent. I think AI has really changed how we present our company to people, how we're able to market to them, and really what their needs are depending on what's happening in the market, as we know. I won't get too deep into real estate, though. We know right now the interest rates are a little too high, but so AI is just, I think it's become a part of all of our lives, unless, as we were talking about last night, unless you get off the grid completely, there's no way to avoid it, so you might as well figure out how you can use it, as an advantage to help you with your company in whatever field you guys are in.
Excellent. Well, I think we are at time. So I want to thank the audience, but more importantly, I want to thank our panelists for their amazing insights. And I think it's pretty safe to say that there's a lot of exciting stuff coming in sports and engagement and technology. And I think the next 3 years will probably be even more incredible than the last 3.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.